You're a salaried worker. You don't need to wait for payday to get paid. You can get paid any day with the Access Bank Payday Loan Offering by simply dialing star 901 star 11 hash. With this unique offer, you can access up to 40% of your net monthly salary before payday to solve present needs and still have enough to enjoy on payday. Now, this offer is open to all salaried workers. So if you want to enjoy this and more, switch your salary account to Access Bank and get paid any day. Remember, it's simple. Dial star 901 star 11 hash and get your loan in 60 seconds. No documentation required. With Access Bank, any day can be payday. Terms and conditions apply. For more information, you can call toll free 0800 004400 or visit our social media and website for more details. Access Bank, more than banking. So the doctor actually shared some very, very serious statistics with me, and I thought this is quite serious and it needs to be talked about. Can you believe that in 2019, hepatitis B resulted in an estimated to 820,000 deaths? Yeah. And the World Health Organization estimates that 296 million people were living with chronic hepatitis B infection in 2019, with 1.5 million new infections each year. And I thought, look, this is quite a very serious issue. So today on our Drive Chat with the Drive Doctor, we got to ask questions about hepatitis B and C, actually. Dr. Yao Osafo is the CEO of Medicas Hospital and he's live on Zoom now. Hi, Doc. How are you? Hello, Doc. Can
Hi,
you hear me?
Kwame. I'm very well.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Nice. And how's your week been?
How are you too?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very
Oh
well,
well,
thank
it's
you.
been good. It's been good. The weather has been very good up here, and
Okay.
even today I was very surprised being in Accra. The weather being very calm
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also cool. So yes, it's been good. Week has been very fruitful up here as well.
That's good. Really good to see you again. I mean, I was just going through some of the statistics that you shared with us about hepatitis B and C, and I thought this is really
Mm.
serious. So it's very important that we actually have this conversation. And I'm sure you have even more damning statistics, don't you?
Right, I do. And good afternoon to all our listeners. It's good to come your way another Wednesday. And Kwame, every July, or specifically July 28th, it's World Hepatitis Day. And I think when we come to talk about hepatitis B in particular, a number of people are quite familiar with it because one person in particular, Ochame Kwame, I believe, has drawn a lot of attention. His campaign on hepatitis B on our behalf, drawing a lot of attention to this particular disease. So today, based on some of the questions I usually get around hepatitis, I decided why don't we just tackle some of the frequently asked questions on hepatitis B and hepatitis C. So that's what we're going to do today, Kwame. And
Absolutely.
yes, indeed, the statistics are quite serious, and you shared some with us already. We're going to focus on hepatitis B for today. If there's time, we'll talk about hepatitis C. Otherwise, we'll do that next week. So globally, an estimated 296 million people are living with chronic hepatitis B. And I'll come to explain that in a bit because I see it's in one of the pool of questions that we have. That's a huge number, almost 300 million people living with chronic hepatitis B infection. And this is for the year 2019. And again, 820,000 deaths, mostly from what we call cirrhosis, which is chronic liver disease, and then hepatocellular cancer or primary liver cancer occurred in, again, 2019. That's a huge number, 820,000, deaths. Kwame, think about it. COVID, the number of deaths that are attributable to COVID and the kind of global attention we have paid to it. And yet we have hepatitis B alone accounting for 820,000 deaths in 1 year globally. And these are some of the very, very damning statistics. So Kwame, I'll hand it over to you, and then you hit me with any of the questions from the pool,
Yeah.
and then I'll provide you with an answer.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that we're doing this, and I'm sure our listeners too are excited about it. Now, if you have any questions as well that you'd want to add to our pool of questions, you might want to send me a WhatsApp on 055-1111-997. First thing I really want to find out is, how is this hepatitis virus transmitted?
Right. So most importantly, it's a viral infection. That's one of the things that we need to know. It is a viral infection, right? Just like coronavirus is a viral infection, HIV viral infection. So the virus is most commonly transmitted from mother to child during birth and delivery. So we'll have what we call the vertical transmission. But it can also be transmitted through contact with blood and other body fluids during unprotected sex with an infected partner. It can also be transmitted through the use of unsafe injection techniques, meaning you are sharing needles with an infected person. It's a high risk thing. And then also exposures to sharp instruments. So it may not be a needle per se, but it could be a sharp object like a knife that the surgeons would use in theater, or any other sharp device. So Kwame, primarily that is how it is, or most commonly transmitted. The virus can also be transmitted through blood transfusions with an infected blood. So that is also one of the reasons why safe blood transfusion is the way to go. And thankfully in Ghana, we have the National Blood Transfusion Service of Ghana, and they issue policy guidelines that ensures that blood that is used in hospitals are safe, because they have been screened properly for hepatitis B. So Kwame, these are the various ways by which the transmission can happen. I must also mention that hepatitis B virus can survive outside of the body for at least 7 days. So you can have the virus on, say, a sharp object that is lying around, typically in the hospital environment, or individuals who abuse or share needles because of substance abuse. They can share a needle or use a needle, and then it is lying down. When we think about the pedicure and the manicure, those who are involved in that particular business, especially those who go around, they're using sharp objects, and in breaking your nails, trimming them and all of that, it is possible that you sustain a cut. How do we treat those sharp objects? You just wipe them off with a tissue. These viral particles are very, very small, about 42 nanometers in size, and therefore it is impossible to detect them with the naked eye. So it can survive outside of the body for 7 days. And during this time, the virus can still cause an infection if it enters the body of a person who is not protected by the vaccine. It also has an incubation period, I need to mention this at that time, of about 30 to 180 days. So that is the time it may take once the virus enters your body for you to get symptoms of an acute infection.
Good stuff. Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier chronic hepatitis B infection. What's that?
Right. So, Kwame, when you get the infection, or when you get infected, and the virus goes through the incubation period of 30 to 180 days, then you may develop an acute infection. And once this happens, your body's immune system tries to fight it off. More often than not, depending on the timing of the infection and the age at which you get infected, then you may develop a chronic hepatitis B infection. And I'll explain. So infection of the virus that occurs in infancy and early childhood tends to lead to chronic infection. About 95% of all individuals who are infected with the virus in infancy and early childhood go on to develop chronic hepatitis B infection.
Wow.
Because, Kwame, in that period, your immune system is poorly developed, and therefore you are not going to win this fight against the virus. At best, you stave off an acute infection, but the virus still lingers on in your body. And we will define chronic hepatitis B infection as the persistence of the virus 6 months after an acute infection. So timing is very, very important.
Okay.
We've realized that it is only about 10% of individuals who acquire the infection at age 5, after age 5, who then go on to develop chronic hepatitis B infection. If you get the infection in adulthood, then only about 5% go on to develop chronic hepatitis B infection. So that is a connection with your immune system. So just to reiterate, chronic hepatitis B infection is the persistence of the virus in the blood 6 months after an acute infection.
Wow. Let's get to talk about the symptoms now. Educate us on some of the symptoms of the infection.
Right. So most people who do not or will not experience any symptoms when it comes to when they are newly infected, what we mean the acute infection, what we call the acute infection. Most people will not experience symptoms, or some people will not experience any symptoms at all. However, some people would have body aches, a fever, sometimes a high-grade fever, yellowing of the skin, which is difficult to perceive in dark-skinned individuals, such as us with a lot of melanin, but you can get yellowing of the white of the eye, what most people would typically refer to as jaundice. There is also a dark coloration of the urine, and it is really, really dark. A dark coloration of
Hello, Doc. Can you hear me? Okay, I think our doctor's Zoom link is a little frozen. So we'll get back to him so that he can continue with the conversation. But if you do have any questions as well, you might want to send it to me on WhatsApp 055-1111-997, okay? 055-1111-997. Do you have any questions about hepatitis B and C? And that's actually what we are talking about today, and hopefully next week as well. If you have any questions about them, just send it to me on WhatsApp 055-1111-997. Nick is asking, after taking the last shot of the vaccine, how many years should it take for me to test and take the vaccine again? Okay, all right. I'll put it to the doctor when he comes back online, yeah? Okay, so I think he's back on our Zoom platform. Doc, can you hear me?
Yes, Kwame, I can hear you.
All right, apologies for that. There was a trip in the connection, but hey, good
to
have you back. Yeah,
right.
But you were talking about some of the symptoms. You talked about jaundice, that's the yellowing of the skin and the eyes as well, right?
Yes.
Dark urine.
I talked about a low-grade fever. Yes, dark urine, dark coloration of the urine. And at this point, I would like to mention that sometimes the urine is very, very dark, like Coca-Cola. So have cola-colored urine for most individuals. So it has to be really dark and not just concentrated. So these are some of the common things: fatigue, nausea, and vomiting, and abdominal pain sometimes characterize the acute infection. So this is what we'll call an acute hepatitis. Most people will confuse this and say, oh, I have malaria, because they have a fever, they have body aches, they will get this alteration in the taste in the mouth, and they would attribute it to malaria. And that is why we admonish people not to go to the drugstore and then just get anti-malaria. You may be having an acute hepatitis B infection.
Okay. Is it fatal?
Kwame, most times the acute infection is not fatal, most times. But you can develop something we call fulminant hepatitis, which is a very severe form of acute liver failure, where the virus is very, very rampant and destroys a lot of your liver cells. And when your liver is taken down, then you can die from it. But I need to reiterate that more often than not, the acute infection is not fatal.
How is hepatitis B diagnosed?
Right. So there are blood tests that are available to us now. Some of them are what we call the rapid diagnostic test kits. They don't require much. You can make the diagnosis in most places in the country with or without a sophisticated laboratory. It is not possible. And, we talk about hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is part of what we call the family of hepatitis viruses, and there are about 5 of them. So we need to be able to distinguish them. We cannot do that on clinical grounds. So you need a blood test to be able to say that you have hepatitis B infection. Then there is a much more sophisticated test that will let us know whether or not this is an acute infection or this is a chronic infection. Even with a chronic infection, we still need to know whether this is a chronic inactive infection or this is a chronic active infection. So, Kwame, if your your immune system is not able to win against the hepatitis B virus and it persists in the blood after 6 months, then you develop a chronic infection. More often than not, the chronic infection is asymptomatic, meaning we don't find any symptoms, and most people would live with the virus for many years without showing any symptoms. However, the disease can progress from a chronic inactive one to a chronic active one and destroy the architecture, the structure of the liver, leading to a condition we call cirrhosis of the liver. And the individual will have a lot of different symptoms, from swollen feet, yellowing of the eyes, pain in the abdomen, pale stools, and so on and so forth. And this usually, the prognosis is not good. Others also go on to develop liver cancer because of chronic hepatitis B. But I must mention that the percentages are very, very small in this group.
Okay, so can I be treated if I have an infection, whether acute or chronic?
Right. So yes, Kwame, the acute infection can be treated in hospital. The hospital, the treatment is usually supportive therapy. So we don't have any direct drug for the acute infection like we would have, say, for malaria, but it is usually supportive, and we support the immune system to overcome the infection. Chronic hepatitis B infection is also treatable, and your doctor would speak to you about it after you've taken the test to look at the profile and also make a determination whether you have a chronic inactive hepatitis B or a chronic active hepatitis B. So yes, there are medicines for treatment, but then you would be cautioned against things like blood donation, sharing of needles, sharing of sharp objects, such as some of the instruments used for pedicure, manicure, and things of that sort. Part of the prevention strategy is also, or treatment strategy is also, or I would say treatment and prevention is also the use of vaccination. So when it comes to hepatitis B in particular, Kwame, there are vaccines available to us to prevent hepatitis B. And these vaccines can be given on the first day of life. There are also medicines that we use to prevent the transmission of the infection from the mother to the unborn child. So that is also very, very important. And that is why the antenatal period is very, very important for us. We screen all mothers who present for hepatitis B viral infection. And if you have the infection, your doctor might put you on medication to prevent the transmission or give you medication right after birth to make sure the child doesn't get the infection. So yes, Kwame, we can treat the infection.
Okay. I think we should talk about prevention now as well, because we we want to avoid it. Yeah.
Right. So the prevention, starts with the vaccination program. And thankfully, Ghana, like many other countries, has adopted the childhood vaccination program. And it all goes to the point I made earlier about the chronic hepatitis B development, that if you take individuals who get the infection in infancy and early childhood, that is before the age of 5 years, as many as 95% of them will go on to develop chronic hepatitis B infection with the risk of chronic liver disease and hepatocellular carcinoma or primary liver cancer. So vaccination, childhood vaccination is very, very important. So in Ghana, every child who attends the so-called weigh-in will be vaccinated against hepatitis B. And this has been standard since about 2006, if not earlier. So that is step one. We also need safe blood strategies, blood transfusion strategies. And I did mention that we've got the National Blood Transfusion Service of Ghana, headed by one of my former teachers, Dr. Justina Ansa. They do a fantastic job for all of us throughout the country, making sure that blood that we use in the hospitals are safe. But we need to donate to make sure that the blood banks are well stocked. So again, I'll make an appeal for all of us to voluntarily donate blood, and they would make sure that the blood is safe. So blood safety strategies. The next point about the prevention is safe sex practices. Safe sex practices. I think for a long time, the focus has been too much on HIV prevention when it comes to safe sex. People forget about the other STIs. Well, hepatitis B, hepatitis C are equally deadly sexually transmitted infections. And what do I mean by safe sex practices? Well, it includes things like oral sex. Sometimes people think that, oh, I don't want to have unprotected sex, so I'll have oral sex and then it is okay. Well, that in particular is an unsafe sexual practice. Having sex without a condom, vaginal sex, having anal sex. Again, some individuals would opt for that, thinking that that is safer compared to penetrative vaginal sex, but that is also a part or comes under the umbrella of unsafe sex practices. We should all try and minimize the number of different sexual partners that we have, and then use protective measures such as condoms to prevent transmission. So, Kwame, these are the various preventive strategies for hepatitis B.
So, one of the things that one of our friends asked earlier was how long they need to wait before they take another vaccine. Basically, the protection of the vaccine, how long does it last?
Right. So, Kwame, the vaccine for hepatitis B, we believe if you take the entire protocol, especially in childhood, you take all the doses, and that's about 3 doses in Ghana, then we believe at least 20 years, but it is said to be lifelong protection.
Okay.
If you're a healthcare worker, then we would encourage you to have a booster shot 10 to 12 years later. So I quite remember when we were going to start our clinical year program in med school, when we were med students and we're starting the clinical year program, all of us were strongly encouraged to take the vaccine and as a booster, if you like. But if you go through the protocol in childhood, then minimum it is 20 years, but it is said to be lifelong protection in about 90% of cases.
Good stuff. I'd want us to have a look at hepatitis C actually next week because we're out of time, right?
Right. So yes, Kwame, I think we don't have enough time to talk hepatitis C. So we'll shift that to next week. Then we'll have full time to take hepatitis B, and then maybe open the phone lines and then take more questions for both hepatitis B and then hepatitis C.
Absolutely. This has been good. Thank you so much, Doc. For those who would want to reach out to you, I'm sure people have issues and they want you to help them address it. How can they reach you?
Right. So those who want to continue the conversation with us or have any questions privately can reach us, Medicas Hospital 0501 477 340. 0501 477 340. And Kwame, here at Medicas, we are able to test. We have all the different tests for hepatitis B, the screening test, the hepatitis B profile, the viral load, the liver function test, the whole gamut. And we're also able to provide vaccination as well for those who need to be vaccinated.
Okay, that's really good. I'm sure people would reach out so that you can actually help them. We're really grateful that you're helping us here, Doc. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Kwame, and I'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
In
Dr.
studio.
Yao Osafo is the CEO of Medicas Hospital, Mampon Equiapim, and Medina Firestone. Giving us some education on hepatitis B. We would continue with hepatitis C tomorrow, next week actually.